Thanks for tuning in. My name is Kinsey. I'm the founder and CEO here at Lofty. I'm joined with senior software engineer Alan Fraley.
Hello.
From our software development team. And today we want to talk a little bit about how we have been integrating low-code solutions into our client projects. And in fact, it's sort of where we prefer to start projects these days. And we're going to give an example of how that works. So I'm excited. Alan and I are going to build some software for you today.
Yeah, with a low-code solution.
So to kind of start things off, first of all, we're a software development consulting firm. We build full-scale custom software. That's been our bread and butter for almost 10 years now. And so you might be surprised that low-code is something we're interested in, but it's low-code, it's not no-code. And really, our business is focused on de-risking software development projects for our clients. It's very expensive to build software, whether you hire it out or do it in-house. It's very labor-intensive, and so anything we can find that lets us bring a product to market faster and create operational value for our customers is always a win for us. And so, again, like I said, it's low code, it's not no code. We're gonna write some code today, but I think you'll understand pretty quickly just how fast we can actually build something useful using these types of tools. So we use Python as a programming language and Django as a software development framework, and that's been that way for a long time.
So yeah, Django is our tooling of choice with REST framework. That's how we build our JSON cannons. And in the past, we would build fully custom software and iterate on that. So these low-code solutions, they allow us to iterate much faster, though, also in that process. So, this isn't necessarily a replacement for completely custom software. But
it's a good starting point.
Very good starting point.
And that's one of our favorite things about it. Django lets us build things very, very rapidly, as we're about to demonstrate. And we can integrate Django as a backend, as a data layer behind one of these low-code solutions, build something functional, and then at any point along the life cycle of that product, eject out from the low-code tool and build custom software on top of it, and we're still using the same backend and database.
Exactly. So we haven't lost anything there. And then also, with these solutions, we can gain insight into the data very quickly.
Very, very quickly. And so that's what we're going to demonstrate today. In fact, we've got a little bit of a starter project. We always start our projects at Lofty with some sort of starter template, so we don't start from scratch. And we've got one built today, which is, it's just what we would call a vanilla Django install. It's very basic. It has Django REST framework installed on top of it. And we have an example database of film sales. Or rentals. It's from a DVD rental business circa 2005, 2006, yeah. And so, use your imagination with us here, but say you're working for an organization that's got some legacy data like this. It's already in a database somewhere, but it's not necessarily your custom software database, right? So there's a lot of examples of this in business. We have a database, it's from this other vendor, or it's a database that someone's maintained by hand, etc. We use it, but it's not the database. If you hire a software company, they would start with a new database typically.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to use some of the features in Django to connect up to an existing database and actually generate code from it that we can start customizing. So we'll start with that. So Alan's got a screen up here. You can see that we have an API running locally on his machine. And right now, there's nothing in it.
Womp womp.
So let's start by, we've got that database running, and we'll start by connecting that up. So we'll I guess go to the database config for Django there.
Let's see right here in our settings.
All right, and so we're gonna add a second database, and I guess we can call this, the name of the database has been informed by our client. The name of this database is DVD Rental.
DND, sorry, that's where my mind's at. DVD rental. Now look at that, junior developers out there. Never be afraid to do some copying and pasting. Just understand what you're copying and pasting.
It's an obscene amount of copy and pasting that happens in software development. You need a comma after your first.
I've got two of them now. There we go.
This is how pair programming works. And so that's one of the really neat things about Django is that it supports multiple database connections out of the box. And in this example, we tend to use Postgres. And this
singular?
DVD rentals, plural, I believe. No, it's singular. Don't believe me.
Okay.
Yeah, it supports multiple databases simultaneously in the application very seamlessly. And right now we tend to use Postgres as a database.
Right.
Sort of the preferred tool for Django.
Yeah, but it can use MySQL, Oracle, you name it.
Anything that you can do JDBC, so Microsoft Access database, Microsoft SQL databases. We've used it with most everything. If it speaks SQL, we can do this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to run a command that Django has that allows us to introspect. I believe it's inspect DB. Is that right?
Yep.
And it will let us inspect a database that we're connected to and actually generate code that models the data.
Yeah.
That was fast. Let's take a look.
I know. It's always so fast, I'm skeptical. I always have to look. Sometimes I've had to do this where we've already had models and I'll make a new model file. Yeah. But in this case, we're starting from scratch and I can close all this
Pull those
noise.
up full screen for everybody.
So we've got generated models.
And it looks like it's every table, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to inspect these with your eyeballs, right? But yeah, it looks like it's got every table.
So this looks just like Django model code that a developer would write to build data models.
How long do you think this would take us to model these out by hand?
Yeah, first you got to call the DBA.
Yeah.
On the IT team.
Right.
And get access to it and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that it's hours, definitely.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
And then there's a lot of trial and error.
We're looking at a couple of days of development, including trial and error.
Probably so, and testing, and of course, like resolving things like what the default should be, stuff like that. I think it's many hours, and we've just essentially gotten that for free. Now, there's not much to see yet. What we've done is we've modeled this data out as if we're building an application. We like Django for this because Django's model system, once you've modeled your database, there are a lot of, I think Django calls it batteries included, but things you start to get for free once you've modeled this out. So we could do a number of things. We could build some admin views for this. We can go edit and view this data in our application. So instantly you're giving end users of your product in your company or externally the ability to now manipulate this data. You can make it read-only if you want it to be read-only.
Yep.
Often one of the things we'll do is we'll take a database like this, we'll make a read replica of it if it's a read-only data store, or you can provide write access to it as well. And Django Admin makes that really simple. In fact, we can just do that really quickly maybe. And if that ran well and built correctly,
then
I'm about to find out.
Declare an explicit
Oh, we didn't install the app.
Okay. Yes.
All right, so we've got our router defined here, and this is just telling Django to use that legacy database for any models that we define in this application. So now we can pull up our admin that we built. And this isn't customized yet.
Right.
There's a lot we can do to add rows to this column.
Make this a little more meaningful.
It doesn't know what field is meaningful in this particular case, right? But as you can see, we can find Thora Temple. And we've got a date time here for when it was last edited. And this is just one example. Again, we can go in and customize this. In fact, we could, for example, let's set the rows for these database fields.
Yeah.
And so we can go modify this model that was generated, because again, it's our code. Oh yeah, or we can do it here. I didn't even think about that.
Oh yeah, sorry.
There's multiple ways to do it.
All right.
Perfect.
Loving when stuff follows convention. And
there you
then
go.
There we go. Now we've got instantly, that's more meaningful.
Yep. So hopefully this is starting to coalesce a little bit, right?
Yeah.
We've got this database.
Because technically we wrote some code here.
We wrote a little bit of code. We didn't write
build
much.
this whole admin page, that we got batteries included, right, with Django.
And now this database that's controlled by finance or HR or whatever, suddenly we've got a little bit of UI on top of it. But just kind of scratching the surface here. We're really going to take this all the way to think of this as we're building like a foundational custom data warehouse on top of this. And these are just the first steps. Okay, great. So we've got that in place, but now what we really want to do is actually put some REST endpoints in place. And the reason why we want to do that, to build an API around this database, is now suddenly we open up the ability to communicate with this database through an application layer over the internet, whether that's internal to your network or external to your network. Other systems can now start to retrieve, push information into this database without having to connect to the database and write code to do it.
Yeah.
So to do this, we're going to jump back into the code and use a little lofty magic.
Is it this guy?
This guy right here. Just a quick look at this code. This is some code that we built today. It's derivative from some base code, and we've got an open source module that we're currently developing that we will be releasing soon. Essentially what this does is, in the same way that Django's inspect-db command looks at a database and unfurls model code for you. This looks at Django models and unfurls API code for you, right?
Yep.
And honestly, we pre-wired it so well that it might just already be working, and I don't know.
That's one of my favorite things about what we do oftentimes. Let's see, would that be?
It's just at the root.
Okay.
Just at the root.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
This is an API. Well, look at that.
Look at that. We've got an API, Casey.
Let's take a look. So if you pull up an actor here, and maybe for people who can't see very well like me, go ahead and increase your font size there.
Well, and I could even, I don't know if the dark mode is, strong with everyone, but yeah, I can also turn that off.
Great.
And then there we go, yeah.
So we've got Nick Wahlberg, the Wahlberg you didn't know existed.
Oh, man, yeah, no, I was wondering if I missed one.
So this is our actor table. Let's take a look back and see, let's look what else we've got here. So we step back to the root of the API.
And what are we looking at here? This is our
this is the browsable API from Django REST Framework, which lets you click through and use the API without having to write code that generates API calls.
So we get to do things like look into
people's addresses.
Yeah. Well, we gotta check that stuff.
Love it. This is anonymized sales data in some cases. I think these are made up addresses. Sure. This is an example database published by Postgres. So if you just saw your address in there, take it up with them. This is an entire database emulating the full data set of a DVD rental store.
Indeed.
Store chain. And so you can see which store the rentals came from. And Alan, I'm having trouble putting into words. What did we just do? We just built an entire REST API for a legacy database in like less than 10 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. Got a JSON cannon, as I like to call them sometimes. And so, we could use this to power any UI we wanted. A low-code solution that we were talking about. Because that's kind of one of the differences, right away. We get this Django admin right out the gate. But this is working in such a way that it's not going to expose the data, from the database in a way that we could use other applications.
Yeah. The admin's for the human to read and interact with and put into. The API is for the machine.
Exactly. Yes.
And there's a lot you can customize here. This is just right out of the box customization. You can see that if you wanted to retrieve payments and get the staff's information, like their first name and last name in this, then you would need to start customizing these API methods to serialize further into the relationships rather than just the primary key. This is a full-blown software engineering framework. You can do all of that. So the best way to demonstrate this, I think, is to actually go into a low-code type tool.
Yeah, let's take a look at what we can do with this.
All right, let's pull it up over here on my screen. Okay, so we're over here on my machine now, and I'm going to drive through Superblocks a little bit. But first I'll show, I've got the same code running over here. Alan just sent it to me. And we are looking at the same API, same data. And then separately, I've got over here, we'll pull up Postman. You can see this is just another expression of the same thing. It's not the browsable API, so you can see when I hit this with a machine, I get the API data back. When I hit it with a browser, I get this nice user-friendly browsable API. The URL I'm using here, I don't want anyone to get too hung up on it, but you're gonna see me paste it around, so I'll explain. I'm using ngrok. This is a thing that lets devices across the internet communicate with data that's just sitting here on my computer really easily without having to do a bunch of IT stuff. In the real world, you would deploy this application and you would put it behind your company's domain name or wherever you wanted to host the application online, and that's what you would use. So this is a little hack to let Superblocks talk to my local app. And so I'm going to create a quick application here, and we're going to call it DVD rental. And let's see what we can come up with.
Yeah.
The world is our oyster. So Superblocks is really neat. We're not endorsed by them, nor do we endorse them. This isn't like we're not sponsored by them. Just happy customers. There are other tools in this area, though. Really popular ones actually called Retool. I think they're one of the ones that, if they didn't invent the category, they certainly won the marketing battle on it. Superblocks, one that we like a little bit more because it lets you use Python. You don't have to. But it's a big benefit to us. This is front end work. We're going to be building some UI here. It makes sense that we would do that in JavaScript. However, sometimes the back end is going to give us a Parquet file that was spit out of a pandas data frame or something like that. We want Python. So we can use JavaScript functions, Python functions. We're going to declare a quick REST API. All right, so I'm going to create a new integration that sets up this API. Now you can connect this to a bunch of different things, including directly to databases. But if you connect directly to the database, you don't have the ability to introduce side effects and other logic that happens in transformations in place. So there are tools that will let you visualize a database. What we're doing is visualizing a database with an application layer in between. And that's important because that layer we're in full control of. We can customize, we can change its behavior, and it's the thing that can evolve into software later. Add our REST API, base URL, it's going to be this. We're having authentication set up right now. We're going to call this the DVD rental API. Create our API. Great, we can start building with it. Let's just start with something really straightforward, and let's put a table in our app here. And so,
who doesn't love a table?
I love a good table. It pops up with some sample data in it.
Let you know what it looks like. That's nice, yeah.
And I'm going to pull up our, let's see here, DVD rental API that I set up here. And that comes pre-namespaced. So if you have like stuff in the URL, it just makes it easy to make multiple requests there. But let's, what do you want to make a table of? Actors?
Actors. Let's start there. Yeah.
All right, let's do actors.
It's kind of the first thing we explored. I think that's,
we'll test it. Actors is not the endpoint. So let's look. I think it might be actors singular.
I think it's singular. Yeah. It's referencing the actor model.
Yep. So we've got somewhere between 0 and 200 actors here.
Nice.
So we just tested it. But now what I'm going to do, this is like, I just want you to follow along here. Run this API. It's fetching our actors. I'm going to go to our table. I'm going to go to the table data. That's just got a bunch of JSON output sort of hard-coded into it. I'm going to delete that. And I'm gonna, this comes up, we'll call this, this API is gonna be called get actors. Okay? Because I like to pluralize it.
There are more than one.
That's bit us multiple times today, hasn't it?
It has.
And I'm gonna use this templating syntax to call get actors dot response. And it pre-fills this for me. And like, we literally just built a table of our actors. And not only did we do that, we can do things like we can come in and customize this table. Let me pull up my sidebar again here. And we can, for example, look at this last update column, and we can instruct the UI, instruct Superblocks that this is actually a date. And we can have it, it'll automatically infer the date format, or you can tell it what the date format is. By the way, power users on the business side might get really overwhelmed by this because this is a low-code tool, not a no-code tool. And these formats that we're looking at is actually, if you didn't know what those were,
take that for granted.
This comes from Perl, this comes from PHP, these string f time type objects here. But we'll put this into somewhat standard date format. Forgive me for putting the year in the wrong spot, but you get the idea. This is all customizable. And depending on what kind of data we have here, there's other options of how we can customize and visualize this. And so let's go ahead and add, an idea I have is, what if we make it where I click on an actor, I get a slide out that pops out that shows me every film in our database.
Yeah.
Let's try building it. I don't know how it's going to go.
No, but this is one of the first things that we use tools like this for, is to explore these relationships between.
Because you can certainly build experimental UIs like this in code, but my goodness, how long would it take for me to build that table?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
This is
that's a
this
half
is
day
where we're
at
really
least.
saving time here. I mean, that was a half day of building
Yeah.
work to get that, and we don't even know if we like it yet. We might change
Right.
it or say, table's not the right way to navigate it. So we're doing design prototyping, like user interface design prototyping, as well as software development prototyping simultaneously
Yeah.
at the same time in this really iterative way. So I've got a slide out. It doesn't do anything, but so we're gonna list movies. So we'll go ahead and we'll throw another table on the slide out. And what we want to do is this slide out is representing this actor, right? So we'll come in here and say the title for this slide out is actually going to be our table that we built, still called table 1, selected row, dot. This is everything from our database. So let's give a first name. There we go. And can I do both? Can I do first name, last name like that? Sure can. Look at that. I'm writing JavaScript here, by the way. That's it. Just writing JavaScript. All right, and then we've got our table here, but we don't want this to be users. We want this to be films. Now, in order to get films, I'll go ahead and clear out the data so it's not a distraction.
Yeah.
We're going to need to make another API call, but we've got all this. So we're going to add another backend API. We're going to pull up the DVD rental API, and we are going to call this one get films for actor. Let's make it real descriptive.
Yes. Very explicit.
So what we need to do here is we need to actually, is it called films or is it called movies?
It is.
It's not movie. Film.
Film. Singular.
Film, singular. So we hit our films table here. There they are. All right, great. Okay, so we've got our films. Pull this up here, and then we're going to map this to filmsforactor.response. Run this API. And now we're actually looking at all films here. Here's a good example of one we can customize. Let's look at the rating here. If we map this to a tag, for example, rather than getting it as text, you get this pill format. If you have multiple values, just really interesting stuff you can do like that that help visually distinguish these things.
Actor.
Now, one of the things we installed in Django is the Django filters module. And so Django filters lets us just use ORM filters in our API query. So I'm gonna flip over here to Postman here. So we've got an actor here, and this is a thing I like to do. It's just give me the dictionary representation of
Show
this
it to
actor.
me. Yeah.
So here they are. And now let's also import the film actor table here. So one of the things we might be able to do. Now I know we can query film actor.objects.filter actor equals actor ID equals actor.actor ID, something like that. And and it works, right? So we've got a list of films that this actor was in. Actor.films. Film set, because it's not, I thought maybe that might work, but it doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah.
That's okay. So here's what we're gonna do. Superblocks can solve this for you. This is the reality of working with a legacy database in your system. Like, I can sit here and think about how I remodel this database schema to make that all joinable.
But we don't have that liberty.
I don't get to do that.
Yeah.
HR is gonna flip if I go modify their PeopleSoft database. So what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna try and solve this with Superblocks. So let's give this a go. We're gonna hit the film actor column, and we're gonna pass in the actor ID is equal to table1.selectedRow.actor ID. Okay, let's test it. Now we're actually going to get like the entire film actor database back, and the reason why is, oh yeah, we got a lot of rows. But the reason why is we haven't applied filtering to that yet. So let's go back to where we did this before in our utils.py, and we're just going to add the ability to filter the film actor table. And we're going to be able to filter by actor ID. And why not? Film ID too, right? So before we got 5,462 rows, we'll test it again. And now we got 18 rows. And you can see, if I run this API, what I get now is it's a different set of data, right? So this is my film actor table. So the solution we came up with is to actually use Superblocks has the ability to run loops in its code. So what we do is we had this method that looks at the current actor, gets a list of films from them. We actually pass this into a JavaScript function that builds that list of films. We then pass that into a loop that is then querying our API in the backend in a loop. And as I run this, I can actually pull up our backend and you can see this doing it. Now, it's not terribly fast.
Right.
I wouldn't want to do this in production, and with a little bit more custom code on the Python side, you wouldn't have to go through this step. But just another example of how quickly you can push through an issue as you're prototyping this. And now we do have the 19 films that Penelope Guinness had in this database. And we can do some stuff like, we need to move the film title, for example, all the way over to the left here. That kept confusing me because I was like, they all start with A. Well, that's just the description. You think like, okay, great. You've built this API, or you've built this app, and it took, few minutes. In real time, we did some editing, probably took 10 minutes to do it. No, we built it for the whole database. We can pull up Ed Chase. It's going to take a second. Oh, and I don't have the slide out being triggered, so that would do it too. So it's going to take a second for Ed stuff to pull up here as we do in the loop. And this is the big O notation for this is O number of films that they were in. But yeah, Ed Chase was in Caddyshack Jedi.
Oh, my favorite.
An awe-inspiring.
Of course.
Epistle of a woman and a madman. Wonderful. So yeah, this can go further and further and further. We could, quickly, one other thing we could do here is actually pull up a modal. We'll drag it in. These are triggered by a button. And so I can, the button gets put in there. You can actually remove the modal later. And let's make this basically a full screen modal that pops open. And then we'll pull up the full details for the individual film when you click on it. You can name these tables, by the way. This is just, they get them in order. And you get to where you remember which table's which, but selected row, title, right? And so this will be Caddyshack Jedi, which is what I clicked on. And then, of course, we could include, what can we do that's not a table, Alan? Let's see here.
Oh, man.
Let's pull up a rich text editor here. And let's go ahead and put in, for the default value, let's put in
description?
The description.
Yeah.
There we go. They have to fight a robot in Soviet Georgia. Plot twist, it's Atlanta, Georgia, but it's Soviet-occupied Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, boy.
It's like Red Dawn meets Caddyshack meets Star Wars.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But the point is, I didn't even have to query this again because it actually does a good job of managing state. The state of these individual items are stored in that table. So all I'm doing is looking up the selected row in that table. I didn't have to go query it. Now, I certainly could. And then there's probably a couple of things that we need to button up here. Again, I can make these toggle buttons that open the slide outs go away. We'll edit our table real quick, and on row click, we do want to open that slide out. So we'll open the slide out, new slide out, it's called slide out 1, and we'll open it. So now on click, we already have it toggled so that when this slide out opens, it runs the call that runs the film list. And then we'll do something similar here, which is on row clicked, we will go ahead and open that modal. Open it. Perfect. Now when I click on it, I get the modal. So,
nice.
Contrived example, a little bit, yes.
Of course.
But it gave us a little bit of trouble in the way that I think is really great to illustrate, because this is what happens when you're working with legacy databases and legacy systems. Now, in real time, we debugged a couple issues as we were working through it with some things we wanted to try today. But as far as real work being done, if we used our templates to do something like this, we've certainly been sitting here for less than an hour. I think you could do this in 20 minutes. And I just want, the folks watching to kind of use your imagination a little bit about the databases inside your company and the things that you could start to building user interface on top of this. I mean, we can push data back into that database. We can make these tables. I don't know if you've seen this, Alan. There's a switch that we flip, we make it editable. Because you do have to think about these sort of user interface concerns, right, in every way. But as I go and I actually edit this, you actually get this save button that works here. And then when I click this button, what do? I make an API call and I switch that to a post, and we post to that, or a put to that input. And we can probably pretty quickly wire something like that up and have it saved back to the database. So I want you to think this is not just a read-only experience we're building here.
Right.
This can be a tool that your customer service team uses to finally put an interface on that database that you used to only be able to use a spreadsheet for, or an access file, or some legacy piece of software that doesn't run anymore. But you get what I'm saying. This can read and write. You can build real software on top of these databases. And then at any point along the way, we can start not using Superblocks, and we can start using Vue.js or React or a mobile application, right? And start building right on top of that. And we can go back into that Python code base on the back end and start expanding it. And that's really our bread and butter, is building that kind of custom software. But man, we can build applications for users in less than 30 days that are very, very robust and solve a really difficult business problem. And you haven't invested in engaging 4 or 5 software engineers, a designer, all of the things that go into building a software team that get really, really expensive, and it takes 6 months to build anything. It doesn't matter what you're building; it's gonna take at least 6 months to build something.
The right thing, that
Correct.
And to iterate on this is so much faster.
How do you feel as a developer? I'm just kind of curious. I think
that's a good question, because right away, I hear low code and I think, oh, that's low me. But that's the I hope, like, what we've illustrated here are some of the common problems that we run into and things like that. And with what we've seen here, instead of me building a table from scratch, my time is better served exploring the data and maybe going, oh, well, what about this relationship between these two, and those sorts of things. Maybe
we can transform that data on the back end and runtime, and how we do that in a memory. Honestly, you mentioned it earlier, Django lets us get rid of a lot of CRUD. This is CRUD for the UI side. And while it may get elevated at some point later, escalated to the point that we want to build custom UI, we got to experiment on it and actually put it to work and put end users on it, clicking around and using this before we've committed the time and resources to building it.
Exactly.
And building UI is not fun anyway.
No.
We'll bring a front-end developer on next time.
They can contest that.
I hope you guys found this informative and educational. If you want to explore what this looks like, we do offer audit services where we can come in and look at a data structure. If we can do this in an hour, let us come by. We'd love to take a look at what you're working with and just see what we can do with it, put something together. So thanks again. Thanks, Alan, for sitting down with me.
My pleasure.
And thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys around.